Thank you for joining us for this remembrance of our friend, our colleague, our professor, Terry Osborne. I want to acknowledge that Terry's wife, MK, and daughter Hillary are with us, and it's great to see them. My name is Doug Bolger. I'm the chair of environmental studies, where Terry has been our longtime colleague. And our intent for this event is for it to be very informal, as I think Terry would have wanted just a chance for anyone who wants to share whatever thoughts or feelings they have in whatever way they feel comfortable. I think many of us are feeling when a person like Terry passes from our lives that there's just so much to process in that and think about and talk about. And I know there's been many emails and text messages and phone calls going back and forth about Terry. Of course, many of us feel the need to process some of the grief and sadness that we all are feeling over the loss of this cherished friend who happened too soon, way too soon. We're not ready for it. And it happened during this time of such isolation. The flip side of that grief is the gratitude that so many people have been expressing about having had Terry in their lives. And I know I feel that. I had the privilege of co-teaching a class with Terry for 9 years. And I learned an enormous amount from him. And it was just a wonderful experience to work with a colleague who you always felt was supporting you and had your back. That was the kind of person he was. And also it was just a lot of fun working with him. And we had a lot of fun teaching that class. So, there's a lot to be grateful for in having had Terry in our lives. And I think also we've been talking about and thinking about, the lessons that you can learn from a life well lived. And, Terry was someone that put his all into his family, his career and his students and his community. And he was beloved in all of those spheres of life. So there's certainly a lot to be learned, from a life that was lived so successfully. And maybe more narrowly for us in environmental studies for a long, long time, Terry has held this unique space, this unique position where he, both through his teaching and his writing and the way he lived his life, he showed us the importance of the arts and the humanities and how they helped us understand our own individual relationship to the earth. And so in addition to the emotional loss of our friend, we're grappling with that intellectual hole that leaves in our program. I think what I'd first like to do is allow any of Terry's students to speak. And so we'll give students, anyone who wants to and is ready to, the chance to speak, and then we'll open it up more widely. So if you are a student, former student, go ahead and put up your blue hand. Kim, you had something you wanted to say?
MK would like to say a few words.
Oh, great.
Yes. First of all, thank you, everyone. Thanks for organizing this, Doug and Kim and whoever else was involved. And thanks. It's so wonderful to see so many faces. I remember actually sitting in on Doug and Terry's team taught course when I first met Terry back in 2005. And they were awesome together. And one of the funny things is that they wore matching shoes often. And I think you got extra credit if you noticed that. But it was great. It was a great introduction to seeing Terry as a teacher. And we were just very new in our relationship, but that was a good introduction. He treasured all of you, every single one, colleagues, students, friends. He loved being a teacher. After his diagnosis last fall, it was so important to Terry to finish teaching that term. It really galvanized his strength. He barely made it through that, but he did make it. He endured 10 days in the hospital trying to get his initial diagnosis. He had major lung surgery during the term. And luckily he saved his seizures that he had, ending him up in the neuro ICU until I think the day after he got his grades in. So he really put teaching as a priority. And then this past spring and early summer were probably Terry's best days in the whole year. He was feeling as good as he had. What did he want to do? Well, he wanted to take walks in nature. Sure. He wanted to do some gardening in the vegetable garden. Sure. But mostly what he talked about is he wanted to teach. He said, do you think I could teach in the fall? And he'd been so sick through the winter. And this was Terry, the optimist, and Terry looking forward. And it was so wonderful to hear that. But mind you, he was on chemo pills, so many other pills that Hillary had to make an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of them. He was on immunotherapy infusions, but what he really wanted to do was teach. And that's Terry. And in this context, especially, he was so humble, but so proud to be a part of the Dartmouth community. And I still can't believe he's gone.
And I just wanted to say, I'm Hillary, I'm Terry's stepdaughter, and just seeing all of you here, it is so touching. And I had met so many of you over the years in passing or at faculty events or at student events or in Terry's classes, at his cover stories, final presentations, which were always so lovely. And it just means so much to us. And thank you for being here and for telling Terry's story with us. He would have been so incredibly touched. So thank you.
MK and Hillary, thank you so much for being here and helping us with this. So we'll open up the floor. Try to use those blue hands. We'll do our best to keep track of who wants to speak when. You've noticed we are recording this because we wanted this to be a permanent remembrance of Terry. We hope that won't inhibit anyone in expressing themselves, but if you do want us to turn off the recording when you're speaking, just ask and we'll do that. Okay, so Kim and I will try to get to everyone that wants to speak. Do we have any takers yet, Kim?
I don't see any blue hands, but if anyone would like to say something, you could also send a quick chat to me and we'll open it up to you.
Okay.
Samantha Newman would like to say something.
Hi, I'm a student of Terry's. I took his class, Nature Writers, last fall. You know, when he was going through his diagnosis, and I know that was an incredibly tough time for him and his family. And I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful that He made it through that term. It absolutely changed my life. Taking that course with him changed the trajectory of my time at Dartmouth, but way, way deeper than that. And so here's something that I wrote. Yeah. So on the first day, I took his class just a year ago. On the first day of class, my sophomore year, I was 2 minutes late because I couldn't find the classroom. From the moment I walked in the door breathless, I felt how Terry cared so deeply for each spirit which touched his life. I felt seen, respected, loved. On the day I heard the news, I wrote in my journal, I just found out that Terry Osborne died. What a kind man. He will live on in the hearts and words of so many of his students and peers. Some mornings I wake up, look around, and I hate everything I see. Terry was the kind of professor who made sure you know that that is okay. Terry gave his students space in the classroom to be happy, sad, ecstatic, angry, afraid, delighted. And he really, more so than that, like Terry made it a point to teach his students how to appreciate life. Our first activity as a class was standing outside and feeling the breeze. We were going out to look at the clouds, but there weren't any. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. I don't know if we see these in order, but it looks like Ezra Cooper is next.
Yeah, thanks. I took Terry's class in the fall of '96, I think. And it was American Essays of Place. And it was a freshman seminar. So it was a very cozy group of about 15 people. And I think that we all really came together and came alive in a lot of ways because of that class. I made several lifelong friends because of the environment that he created and the way that he allowed us to all share our writing through the kind of through the lens of nature. And he made a big impact on my life in terms of the writing that he assigned and the work that we did, and both the writing and the practical exercises in nature, doing walks and sitting out in the bima and things like that, similar to what Samantha said. And I think the stuff that he turned on to me and the ideas that he gave me affected my whole life. Whenever I traveled after that, I was always seeing things through the lens of place. And when I went to the desert for the first time to Death Valley in California, I was very much in mind of Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire on that trip, and thinking about Terry then. So I know that my friends from that class, we talk every once in a while. Whenever I see them, we usually bring up Terry. So he made a lifelong impact on all of those of us in that class.
Thank you, Ezra. Jackson Harris.
Hey there, good afternoon. It's really great to see a lot of your faces I'm familiar with. I took Terry's classes the first course I was in at college. It was The Snow Leopard. And that's a big book about a big adventure, but really it's about a lot of little adventures and all the steps it takes to get there. And I am just so grateful for Terry for giving me the space to listen and consider and introduce me to the practice of mindfulness, which has truly changed my life, and I have a lot of love for that man. So.
Thank you, Jackson. Pihi.
Sure. first of all, I think it's really telling that the first thing I saw was just so many familiar faces who I really miss. And there's just, I feel so many mixed feelings because I feel so much joy to see some of the people who I considered to be my Dartmouth family. And I think that's a testament to the kind of person Terry was and the people he brought together. I was in Terry's eco-psychology class my first year at Dartmouth, which was in 2012. And he had such an impact on me in so many ways in my 4 years there and beyond. He, you know, I don't really think of myself as a writer, or, well, I love to write, but I don't think I'm a good writer. And Terry just really encouraged me in that class. And by the time I was a junior, I remember he had sent me an email because I took other Terry Tempest Williams' writing class and had written a natural autobiography that Terry Osborne had read. And he sent me the nicest note. I went back and found it about how proud he was of me, how he knew that I could write this, like, just that he was so proud, and like, this is the kind of writing that I know you're capable of. And he went on to serve as a committee member for my senior fellowship, and just, you know, beyond, just was such an incredible person who really just so truly cared about his students. And I'm 4 years out of Dartmouth and in grad school, and I just don't know how to convey how much it matters to have teachers who really believe in you when you don't really believe in yourself. And Terry very much was that person, not just for me, but clearly for other students. I went back and found my classmates from that class back in 2012 and shared the news when I heard a couple weeks ago. And every single person, people I haven't spoken to since that class 8 years ago, reached out and talked about how much he had an impact on their lives.
Thank you, Leahy. Lucas Rathgeb.
Yeah, so much like Jackson, I took the Snow Leopard with Terry my freshman fall. So Terry was really my first experience of Dartmouth. And I really couldn't have asked for a better way to be introduced to kind of the community and the school. Coming in was, I don't know, not really much the type of person to really believe in anything, but I don't know, I was just really struck by Terry and just the passion and the enthusiasm that he brought to teaching, and really to life, I guess, in general. And it's something that just really kind of rubbed off, and I just could not be more grateful.
Thank you, Lucas. Claire Doherty.
Hi, yes. Just like Lucas and Jackson, I too had Terry for my first class at Dartmouth. I was in Snow Leopard with Jackson, and I cannot imagine a greater gift than it was to have Terry that early in my career at Dartmouth. He did a few things for me that I'll never forget. And the first is that he was the first teacher that I ever had that really allowed a space to connect the way that I experienced the world in my life, to the academic sphere. And I felt such a strong validation in that, because I didn't know how to talk about that before, or how to connect the world that I lived in to the world that I lived in class. And he allowed that and validated that. And it was a beautiful setup for the rest of the way that I viewed class through my time at Dartmouth. The second thing he did, and this has been echoed through what everyone has already said, is he's the professor that treated students, not just as students, but as humans as a whole, and really showed the value in that. And I think that's shown in the fact that we all had to meet with him multiple times through the term. And it would sort of be maybe disguised as talking about a paper, but I think that maybe everybody would talk about their papers for 5 minutes, and then you'd find yourself talking about a million other things in your life, and he somehow knew how to translate that all into something digestible and almost always beautiful and validating as well. I'm so grateful that I had Terry in my life, and yeah, I'm really going to miss having him around.
Thank you, Claire.
Oliver Edelson would like to say something.
Okay, Oliver.
Great. Well, thanks. I first met Terry. My sister and Jacob, Terry's son, were actually friends. And as soon as I got into Dartmouth, my sister's first line after congratulating me was, "Well, you have to take a class with Terry." And so I didn't get to it freshman fall, but freshman winter, I took Humans in Nature in America with Terry. And I think that I want to echo so much of what other people have said, but I think to sort of turn he treated his students as humans he treated himself as a human. And he brought that to the classroom in the way that other people and other professors that I've had and other teachers sort of brought the material and the theory. He was the first teacher I've ever had that made himself vulnerable. And I think that gave all of the people in his class the ability to feel okay about expressing their emotions to him. And I think that was so foundational for my, not just my academic experience, but my personal journey, my own mental health, to know that people that I respected were vulnerable just like me. And I also think, just to sort of echo what Professor Bolger said at the beginning, I think there's such an incredible place for humanities within an environmental studies major, and he brought that out. I think I was someone who knew I cared about environmental studies, knew I wanted to major in it, but had no idea of my own place in my interests. I didn't understand, and I was really almost intimidated by the scale of the issue when we talk about, the need for sustainability and for, transitioning to a low carbon society, and how that connected back to me and my own lived experience. And I think Terry was so easily able to coax that out of me and sort of make me see that connection between, the personal connection and the larger concepts that we're studying in other classes. And so I don't think I would have been able to get so much out of my other experiences at Dartmouth if it weren't for Terry, and I'm really going to miss him.
Thank you, Oliver. Eva Legg.
Hi. Yeah, I had Terry for eco-psychology my freshman winter for a freshman seminar, and his class just completely changed the way I saw the world. I had no idea that you could pursue in an academic sphere studying the relationships between humans and the natural world, which is something that I've grown up always being so interested in. And his class just set me down this path at Dartmouth that I feel so grateful for, just taking class after class, being spurred on by that first push that he gave all of us to just say that, this is something that is completely valid for you to study. And I remember he took us to the big empty meeting place, BEMA, at Dartmouth during one of the beginning weeks, and we were just supposed to sit in the area and notice the different sensations around you and practice forest bathing, which is something I hadn't been exposed to before. And ever since then, I've been returning to that same place just to find peace and connect with the natural world again. And I just connect that place with him so much. So hope his spirit can live on there a little bit.
Thank you, Eva. Kate Salamido.
Hi there, everyone. It's so bittersweet. It's so good to be here with all of you in community this evening, but it's also obviously really sad to have to be here at all. What Oliver said earlier really resonated with my experience with Terry. I think that so many of us, when we are at work or at school, sort of like adopt this shield or this persona that distances ourselves from the people around us. And I think that, you know, Terry was probably the only professor I ever had at Dartmouth, with whom I really felt like he was there. Like, it wasn't like Terry the teacher wasn't there, like Terry the person was there in the room with you. And there just wasn't this barrier between you and him. And it was just incredible to have this experience of this like mentor and teacher figure who was so like fully present and really brought himself into the space in this like really radical and incredible way. And I think that you know, I don't remember anything we read for the class I took with him. I don't remember any of the conversations we had, but I remember how like deeply compassionate a person he was. And I think that for me, and I think for a lot of people, having the opportunity to be in Terry's class was really this incredible object lesson in how to be a person in the world and how to be present for people and how to be just so deeply compassionate and kind. And I think that's the impact that he had on me. It wasn't really like how to be a better writer. It was, you know, how to walk through the world in a way that at the end of the day, you'll be proud of who you were and how you treated others. So yeah, thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Kate. Brooking Gatewood.
Hi, everybody. I want to echo that it's really sweet to see some faces, particularly other teachers who've touched my life. So it's nice to see you, Doug and Jack and others. I think I want to speak into something that I haven't heard named yet, though I want to echo a lot of what I have heard. And I'm thinking about the sort of mythological frame of one's life in the American society, where we come from this very tattered cultural blanket, many of us, and this educational opportunity at this elite institution, and what a gift Terry was, sort of playing the role of the mentor along the path for those of us who were craving a different way of being in the world. And I felt like I was so impacted by his death, though I haven't talked to him since I was a student, because I was reflecting on how much my fundamental way of being was made possible by the little doorway that was open for me in his class, and how we relate with place, and my belief in the deep importance of that to help us through the situation we're in with our planet. And I just keep thinking about all the students who won't have that experience. And I don't know that he's replaceable, but I just want to speak to the importance of that offering in the world of helping us remember how to relate with place. And he did it so beautifully and humbly, and offered us books like Terry, the other Terrys who's on this call, that for many of us were life-changing. And so I'm just really reflecting on his wisdom keeper role and the loss of that, and how that torch can get passed so that that teaching still happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooking. Lauren Foley.
Hi everybody. It's so lovely to have this space to share this evening, and I see faces that just mean so much to me, MK and Hillary and Jacob. Hi. I was Terry's student in the spring of 2000 in the freshman seminar, American Essays of Place, and it was really through those readings, and particularly the way he taught us to write about them and then ourselves, that I started coming out to myself. And Terry was so pivotal in that. When I got engaged 12 years later after that, after a lot of drama that Terry was also very pivotal helping me through, it was so important to me that my fiance, Melinda, now my wife, meet Terry and MK. I think it's the one time she's been in Hanover at Dartmouth. We live far away from there now. And I was like, the thing we have to do is to meet Terry and MK. Because I just look back on that time of my life, and he just entirely helped shape that experience for me for the better. And teaching me how to write about it has helped me now in life in understanding how I feel about everything. And the other piece that Terry has been so influential for me is a sentiment that all the other students on this echo, which is the classroom space that he created and how he conducted class. And I'm now a professor of political science and constitutional law. Nothing crazy ever happens in those areas. And whenever we have a hard thing that happens in American politics and law, the first thing that I think of as a professor is, what would Terry do with this and his students? And when I have students who struggle to understand, I taught the day after the 2016 election. I taught all through the Kavanaugh hearings. And I just thought of Terry on Monday, helping my students walk through thinking about Justice Ginsburg's stuff, how you conduct that environment for students. And he is my touchstone when I think about the kind of professor that I want to be and the impact that I want to make on my students. So thank you again for just having the space tonight for all of us to come together and share.
Thank you, Lauren. Miles Timo.
Hi there. I took Terry's Humans in Nature in America class my sophomore winter, which was a couple of years ago. For one thing, I was a comparative literature major, which is a really open-ended, ambiguous major. I was trying, at that point, I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted my course of study to be. I knew I wanted to do something with environmental humanities and eco-criticism, and I didn't really know how to go about it. So, I mean, just one thing academically that I got out of that class is Terry gave me the confidence to push forward with what I really wanted to do. And he turned me on to all sorts of ideas that I kept referring to throughout the time that I was completing that major. At one point in the class, one thing we read was an excerpt from Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. I had read it in high school, and at that point I thought it was really dry. I didn't really get it, but then when we read it with Terry, read it really with a new sense of wonderment and amazement at it. And then a couple years later, when I had to do a culminating experience for my major, that was one of the primary source texts that I went with. So academically, that was a really significant class to me. But just on top of that, I think Terry really encouraged me to think about, so much is said about the wilderness of Dartmouth, of the mountains and the forest. And I think Terry's class really encouraged me to think about what the environment at Dartmouth means, because also at that time was around the time they were thinking about building a dorm in College Park. So when we were going out, into the BEMA and doing those contemplative place assignments, we were really pushed to think about not just what does this space mean as a forest, sort of generally speaking, but what does this place mean to Dartmouth specifically. And so, yeah, I think that really kind of unlocked that in my mind, not just, oh, the beam is cool because it's it's a forest, so forests are nice. It was more this is a place I can come and feel a connection to because it's a part of Dartmouth, and this is a part of my Dartmouth experience. Yeah, so just giving me a whole new appreciation of what it means to be in the wilderness space during my Dartmouth time. And then, once again, just to echo what everyone is saying, the class environment he created, encouraging us to check in with ourselves, even if it was just only one word at a time. I think the first time I had ever encountered Terry was during a mindfulness group about a year before. So, to experience that throughout a whole term, creating that kind of environment where we could just be open and vulnerable was was really something special to experience.
Thank you, Miles. There's someone showing up on the screen here whose name is DMPZ506YKD8W. Does that sound familiar to anyone? You have your blue hand up.
I think that's David Peart.
Oh, David. You're muted, David.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So am I on screen?
We don't see you. We just see your code name.
Is this okay?
Yes.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hello, yeah, I'm David Piet. I can hear you, yes. Can you see me too?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Sorry about all of that.
That's okay.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Dave Piet. I'm emeritus faculty in bio, and Terry was a dear friend and colleague for many years, and have some great memories of working with him on various things, including planning the sustainability minor and a number of walks with students where I was doing natural history, ecology, and evolution. Terry was keeping us all present with ourselves and each other and nature. And many of those moments come back to me now just as clearly as the time, even though they might have been over a decade ago. And I think that's just a testimony to the kind of presence that Terry brought to things. I'll never forget those moments out in the field and in his house with MK. I think often those of us who suffer a lot, I'm not putting myself in that category, but I think Terry certainly had his share, learn deeply how to learn about ourselves, and we learn about how to be present. And I think that was a big part of the story of Terry's life. So thank you all for sharing, and by sharing in the way that you are now and the way you did when you were in contact with Terry, creates and expands, this presence and this consciousness. So we're all part of it together. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good to see you. Let's see, Rosalie Lipford.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces that I miss so much. I spent quite a bit of time at Dartmouth feeling like a misfit, and environmental studies felt like the closest fit to a major I could find. But even within that, I felt a bit lost. And it wasn't until after college that I really discovered that the psychological ramifications of environmental phenomena and climate changes was the angle that I wanted to take. And I really have Terry to thank for that. I have since become a mental health therapist, and I just don't know that I necessarily would have found that path otherwise. Also, my first memory of Terry involved eating New Mexican enchiladas in the SLC, and I now live in New Mexico, so things have really come full circle.
Thank you, Rosalie. Edie Farwell.
Oh, wow. So nice to hear these stories. So I live here in Norwich, Vermont, and have known Terry for a lot of good Vermont time. However, I've known Terry for many phases. Terry and I grew up together. We went to the same grade school back in Illinois. And he was a year ahead of me, and Terry was known for being, I think, the best athlete. He was a football star back then, so I think you all know him in a different way, but he's an incredible athlete. He was a total star, rock star of the whole school. And then we both graduated from 9th grade, and decades passed, and I moved to Vermont, and I got to know Terry through my niece Saren, who's on this call, who told me, you've got to get to know Terry Osborne. He is the best professor at Dartmouth. He is my favorite professor here. And I thought, interesting. So then got to know Terry and MK. What a treat. And then my son, Cedar, who's about to join the call as soon as he gets off work, also said, this is my favorite professor at Dartmouth. And so got to know them through the students. And then a few years ago, I had my own health issue, and MK, big hugs to you. I've been so thinking of you, and Hillary and Jacob. And MK and Terry came over and brought me dinner and said, we're coming over, we're bringing you dinner. And that launched a whole series of dinners and ping pong. And so Terry and MK have been our ping pong partners, and I have gotten to see Terry's grade school athleticism come out again through ping pong. And then just whatever it's been, 2 weeks, we started our 30th anniversary. My husband Jay, who's also on this call, by sobbing over breakfast, by hearing the news Terry was in hospice. So we started our day with complete sobbing with that, and feel the loss very deeply, and really nice to congregate with you all. And I feel all the different stories I have of Terry throughout the decades, from Illinois to New Hampshire, Vermont, are very precious. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. I think you have the record so far, and the person that's known Terry the longest.
I guess I grew up with Terry. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Jack and Kathleen Shepard.
Hi, this is Jack Shepard. I had the office next to Terry. That's good news and bad news in some ways. We could hear each other when students came to visit, so we would critique, oh, that was a particularly difficult, or that was a wonderful student, and so forth. And I think that one of the wonderful things, Doug, about and all of you, that comes out of this gathering today is how much larger a person than we knew individually Terry was. I find one of the themes today, speaking rather professorially, to be affirming. What an affirming person he was. Although we had our arguments, and he often taught in 101 Fairchild, and to be candid, he was a loud teacher quite often, and I would sometimes get up and have to close the door, and then he would come at the end of class and say, was that too loud? And I'd say, yes, that was much too loud. I couldn't hear the student who was with me. But he was a wonderful, affirming colleague. When he was writing, he would ask me about the writing that I was doing. When I was writing, I would do the same with him. And it was always from him, oh, this is terrific. Keep doing this. Keep doing this. You're going to be good. It's all right, you know? And one of the things that came out of this memorial, the collective part of it, were two surprises to me. One was his love of birds. I was totally unaware of this. And the other one, which I was very much aware of, particularly through Kathleen, was his role and purposeful role in the Native American community, the Abenaki community here in the Upper Valley. And how broad a person he was, just really beyond the classroom, beyond his contact with each other, with me. And that is really a powerful kind of statement about a human being, that he is, or she, are much larger people than we can be aware, and they bring to our relationship so much more than we had anticipated at the time we knew them well, or thought we did know them well. Thank you very much, those of you who have organized this. It's quite extraordinary to hear these very affirming kind of statements about Terry and his life.
Thank you, Jack and Kathleen, and so nice to see you. Let's see, who else do we have here? John Carey.
Hey, Thanks. My experience with Terry, my connection to him is different, I think, from most of the others here, and it's been so great to hear from so many of his students. And I wish I had that connection to him as well, because it's really powerful to hear all of your experiences with him. For the last 16 years before Terry's diagnosis, almost every Tuesday and Thursday morning, Terry and I and a group of our friends started our days playing hockey together. I can testify to his athletic talent. I like the word sublime because it means a kind of like a combination, something that's a combination of beautiful and terrifying. And so Terry's a sublime hockey player. He really, he's amazing on the ice, but that's not the point of our games. But he's also, he's a big, powerful guy, and most of the rest of us, myself included, are not. And so there was something kind of, awesome about watching him move around the ice. But I can't tell you how many times in the last 16 years, I've kind of had a near miss where I kind of looked up and realized, oh my gosh, I was, inches from a collision with Terry. And I can tell you that would have ended really badly for me. And with not really, Terry would not have really noticed. And what I realized is that, once that happens enough times, and you realize that even in the chaos of the hockey game, he's not only the best player out there, but he's paying more attention to what I'm doing than I am paying attention to myself. And he's making sure that I'm okay. And I think so, Terry, I think, moved through the world the same way he moved around the ice, which was with an incredible grace and beauty, but also with an incredible consciousness of and care for the people around him. I'm gonna miss him.
Thank you, John. Terry Tempest Williams.
This is a hard one, isn't it? MK and Hillary and Jacob and Carrie, we love you. And thank you so much, Doug and Kim, for putting this together. We needed it. And to our Dartmouth friends and former students who are now dear friends, we are here together. And I just want to pay tribute to Terry, both as a friend and as a colleague and as a fellow writer. Doug, as you know, the first time I met Terry was with you in your classroom, and I found emails from both of you from 2008, and that really changed my life, seeing what education could be, that a scientist with a writer who loved literature and could come together in the name of a shared humanity, of seeing the world whole. And I think it was in that moment that I realized what was possible. And Terry and I became very close friends. And what I appreciated him was what I know as a writer is that he wasn't afraid of his melancholy, that he dared to talk about darkness as a writer and as a human being. And that it was in that darkness that he came to know the power of light and joy. And I think it's the full range of Terry that I hold now. His melancholia, his absolute joy, his raucous laughter, as much as the absolute depth and brilliance of his mind. I always knew that I could come to him with a question and he'd be honest, and that he would take the idea to a deeper level, which he always did. I think he was so humble. And I don't think Terry knew his power. I just wonder about that. I think he does. But I was always amazed of how he would underestimate himself. And I remember last year it was almost a year to the day. We heard about his diagnosis, and I took a bus to see him and MK and Hillary, and he picked me up, and there was the biggest smile on his face. You know, I thought this is going to be so hard, but it was all about being present. It was about his joy, and it was about his power. And in that moment, there was this acceptance that this is life. This is where I am. And it was as though everything in his life had brought him to that moment. And when we saw each other, it was joy. And I remember that same joy. And that's not to say that there wasn't sadness or shared tears, but there was something that transcended that. And I remember that same joy when we were in the Galapagos together with Brooke and all of us. And when we had jumped in and were swimming with this whale shark, and the look, if you can see tears of joy underwater, I saw those with him. It was just everything that he taught us about a love of the land and wildness and nature, and also the transcendent spirituality that he held for all of us in his own quest, was in that moment, those tears underwater as he was swimming so powerfully as the athlete he is with that magnificent being. And I think just in closing, I wanted to share a passage that I know he loved. Peter Matheson and all of us who were his students loved the snow leopard. And when he passed, I went to find a passage that I thought, what would Terry be saying to us? And this is the one that opened. In a dream, I am walking joyfully up the mountain. Something breaks and falls away, and all is light. Nothing has changed, yet all is amazing, luminescent, free, released at last. I rise into the sky. And that's where I feel him. I feel like we all now have an ancestor who is looking after us. And I just every night look up to the sky and say my prayers to Terry Osborne and thank him for his illuminating presence that continues.
Thank you, Terry. And good to see you. And Brooke, I assume that was Brooke's arm that was in the picture there. And thanks for all that you've contributed to environmental studies over the years.
Can we call on Thora Olson next?
Thora?
Hello, everyone. I feel like I will probably cry, and that feels appropriate because that's mostly what I did with Terry. I met him my freshman winter. I took a class with him, and I was kind of a snarky freshman. And the first thing I remember saying to him was I raised my hand and I said, I'm over Thoreau. Why are we reading Thoreau? And I thought that would piss him off. And he just, he loved it. And immediately I loved him. And I didn't really take many classes with him, but I spent so many hours crying in his office, like multiple times a term. I would go in to check in and update him on my work, and I mean, honestly, he was so generous. I feel like at some point he should have just told me to get a therapist, but Terry just held so much space for grief. And I think that is, he was funny and mischievous and had this light, but like, that's really the gift that Terry gave me, is the capacity to sit with grief, especially in the environmental studies world, where so much of the narrative we're fed is like, yeah, feel your sadness, but then like move on so we can find the problems, move on so we can build the solar panels. And for Terry, there was this major pause of like, what happens if you just let yourself unravel? What happens if you just let yourself sit in this grief? And that, shifted the way that I move through the world entirely. Really feeling it.
Thank you, Thora. Anyone? I think I'm out of blue hands. If I missed anyone? Karen Bielek.
Hi. I just wanted to express again how much I'm gonna miss Terry, and my condolences with the family. My daughter Kendall is here, and I thought this is just. And before the call, I was laying in the grass with my girls, looking up at the sky because I thought Terry would want me to take this moment to enjoy this. And he actually his thoughtfulness and emails that I got to him from him as he was going through his treatments and about being present helped me get through the early stages of this pandemic when I was with my girls and trying to figure out how to get through each day, just me and the two of them, and with some assistance from my dad. But anyway, what was really wonderful and like the latter part of Terry's and my relationship was being able to commiserate with him, or not commiserate, but share the joys, but also the struggles of parenting. And he, I think, helped me understand that, you know, you might make a few mistakes, and that's okay. And we have a second, and maybe we'll do better the second time or in the future. And it was just nice to know that you could share those things and know that someone wasn't, you know, judging you for being challenged at times with parenting, but no, it was okay. As people bounce around and zip things and bang you with things. So anyway, I will really miss his smile and those conversations in environmental studies, and so will Kendall, because he always welcomed her wonderfully when she came in with me. So.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, Kendall.
So I think Michael Cox wants to go next.
Michael.
Sorry, I was muted. So I now have to reiterate what I said for 3 seconds. So for 8 years, my office was down the hall from Terry's, and I guess I remember he would walk by my office, honestly, probably on the way to the men's room, because he had to pass my office to get there, and he wouldn't slow down, but he would kind of shove his hand out to say hi with this huge palm into my office with this big smile, and he would manage to establish a human connection with me in about half a second on his way to more urgent matters. And, you know, particularly in the first couple of years where I was trying to figure out this whole new identity of being whatever I was at Dartmouth, he was very grounding for me as the guy always down the hall who I saw spending lots of time with students. And I became, I don't know, dependent or whatever, but it really started to mean a lot to me that I knew that he was going to be walking by my office. It made my office feel more like a home. And I mean, the other thing I feel like I really learned from Terry was something that a few people have commented on, which is trying to be more available. I've learned this from many people, because maybe it's a thing you have to learn from more than one person, but I went to his class once, and my first thought honestly was, wow, this class is not going fast. That people are taking their time to express thoughts, that Terry is taking his time. And that's something I've struggled with as a teacher, is that when I get excited, I start to go really quickly.
Remember that we spoke, so I don't have to worry.
And I've actually had students say, you know, you could slow down sometimes. And something I've learned from Terry is, you know, the more important something is, sometimes it means the more time you need to take to express it. And you don't need to kind of pump it out so much. And learning how to be vulnerable with students and how to be a more whole person with your students, and not feeling the way I feel like a lot of us feel, is that I need to be a content deliverer and I need to kind of protect myself by proving my mastery about something, and being kind of softer and being willing to kind of be more present. I mean, that's been something that multiple people have said that really struck me. And I think those are lessons that we just kind of, all of us keep learning. I don't have some kind of fancy conclusion here, that's all.
Thank you, Michael. Jay Mead.
Hi, my wife Edie spoke a little earlier about her deep connection, and I have a different kind of connection as well. I mean, I really lost it when I heard that Terry left us. I felt like he was a brother, and it was just his just essential sweetness. But the other aspect that I want to share with you is I've thought of him as a weaver in the community, and so I'm connected with an organization called Cover, and he created a class for the last 9 years that was called Cover Stories, and it was a way of connecting people of privilege in the Dartmouth community with people in poverty in the Upper Valley, and which is what our organization works on, shelter and access for these people. And Terry's wisdom and grace, so fantastic. One thing he did that was so nice for our organization was at the very end of this experience, and the students would create often videos and basically stories about the people, different aspects of what we did. We would have a lunch together, and we're sharing a meal, but it was a guided conversation that went on. And for the people who are homeowners who would never step into a Dartmouth building, it was an incredible experience for them. And I'm so grateful for Terry to create that space and to understand also the environment of poverty and the human condition. And I just, yeah, he just was a fantastic person to do that. And we are really lucky to have had him at Dartmouth.
Thank you, Jay. Is there anyone else out there who'd like to say a few words? I'm just going to hold the silence for a little while, like Terry would. Dave Lutz.
This is going to be hard to get through, but I think a good memory I have of Terry that indicates how different and special he was among the many. When I was on the other hall, Terry was a couple doors down from me, and we got Waffle the dog, and I had to bring the dog in. I put down plastic sheeting, the whole thing, and this was a handful of years ago now, but a lot of people came to see the dog. Students would come and other people would come. And Terry Osborne, when he would see this dog, would lie down on the ground all the way in the middle of the hallway in EMBS, and he would let the dog, Waffle jump all over him. And he was coming from his class and he was just rolling around in the middle of the hallway. I thought that I had never seen anybody do that, and it speaks to how in touch with himself he was, and um, how happy he was being in the moment, and at that it speaks to his ability to be mindful and to be in that moment, because when he was there with Waffle the dog on the ground in the middle of the floor, he was there. I've never seen anybody do that, and I don't know anybody else who's comfortable with themselves to be able to do that, and I won't forget that. Among many things, but that's something that that I think about.
Thank you, Dave. Patty Hernandez.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you. And I really thank you for putting all of this together. I also had a really hard time because of the times we're going through to hear about Terry. It was just, it broke me down completely. I think of him and I just break down, which is okay. It's okay. But what I wanted to share with you is Terry and I always talked about the students and the work we did. And there was something so wonderful and profound that he would always project. There was so much love for the students, so much excitement. Anything that he would share, it was really so honest and transparent and just full of energy. Appreciating every single moment that he would spend with the students. It was just so refreshing, so incredibly powerful and wonderful, because we just, I don't see that so much, I have to say. And it was just, and so generous, so generous, all the time of the world. And he was always present. I actually saw him more we took Tai Chi together. And he was an incredible mover, and just, I love the way he did Tai Chi, because his breathing, it was so grounded, and he just gave the time that was needed to ground the movement. There was no rush, there was no slowness, it was what it needed to be. It was wonderful. But all the in-betweens, we would kind of talk a little bit about the students, and it was just, it would bring me so much joy to be talking with him and all the love that he had for the students. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Patty.
Looks like Sarah in Houston has her hand up.
Thank you. And thank you all. This has really been so amazing. And I echo what so many of you have said. I've really needed a space to be together, to hear stories and reminiscences and shared experiences. And just building, I was inspired to raise my hand just after Patty was speaking about Terry's profound love of students, to share one of my experiences from being with Ezra in the seminar on essays of place, which was truly transformational for me too. And one of the significant moments for me in that class was we had to write a paper about refuge by Terry Tempest Williams. And that book was hugely significant because of the history of breast cancer in my family. So it had landed in a different way than other texts. And so I was laboring really hard to figure out how to do textual analysis. This was kind of a new skill for me.
And I ended up writing 8 drafts of that paper. And I just have like deep memories of biking up even kind of late in the day and handing Terry another copy and being like, am I getting it? Like, how is this going now? And he would diligently read through it and give me so many comments and so much feedback. And that was really where I learned how to write, in a sense, and how to kind of work with words and see them as my friend and my kind of, colleague, if you will, and my delight. And at the end of all of that, when I was feeling a little self-conscious about asking a professor to read so many drafts of a paper, he flipped it entirely and said, Sarah, and I just really want to acknowledge your determination and your interest and your commitment to learning and to, being present in this text, and to really allowing yourself to feel all the ways that this book has impacted you. And I just remember, like, when he was like, but what do those birds mean? Why are you choosing those ones? And that, that was over 20 years ago. And that just, in some ways, sort of speaks to my whole experience with Terry, of always our communications, always kind of going right in, very deep and sincere and connected, even when there's been months of space. And the last thing I just wanted to share, which is one of the last things that I emailed with him about, was the ending of our seminar, when my memory of it, Ezra, I'd be curious if you have the same memory, was that he was crawling on the floor. We were in a circle and he had his hands up in the air and he was like, what does this all mean? And we were all like totally, speechless. And finally, one of the students was like, ah, and just sort of, groaned and emoted. And Harry laughed and was like, that is a perfect way to end this class, which I, thought was so brilliant. And that's been with me a lot these past couple of weeks, of like, what does this all mean? And just kind of being present with our experiences and with our memories, and with profound sadness about the physical loss of Terry, although, as all of you have mentioned, he feels very energetically present. So thank you again, and I really have loved hearing all these stories.
Thank you, Saren. Katie Gougelet.
Hi, everyone. This is Remy Franklin. I'm here with you. We're both going to share, but it's such a gift to be here and to hear all your stories about Terry. So thanks for creating the space and for sharing so generously. I took Terry's freshman writing seminar where we read The Snow Leopard, as I think a number of you did. And I just remember one of our assignments was to go find a place in nature and visit it every week and then write about it. It was so simple and so something Terry would do. And I just remember going to this tiny patch of woods up along the Connecticut, north of campus a little ways, and literally just sitting there, sitting there and trying to be present, trying to notice what was around me. The sounds of this was in the winter woods and the ice on the Connecticut. And I wouldn't have, if you'd asked me a month or two ago, whether, like, who are the big mentors for me and influences in college, I wouldn't have immediately thought of Terry. But since getting to think of him again in the last few weeks, I've had this interesting thought about how many of the things I've organized my life around were themes from Terry's class that winter. As an environmentalist, as an educator, as someone, that increasingly feels like I'm spiritually seeking, as a life coach, the work I do, it's so much about the principles and lessons that Terry taught. And I just had this vision, as some of you were speaking earlier, of how many people that's probably true for. We're probably this tiny piece of it, and I'm just sure there's like so many people like me that took one class with Terry and maybe had some great conversations with him a few times throughout college, and it just rippled into this this huge impact just on my own life in these more subtle ways, and I'm sure for so many other people. So just really grateful to have crossed paths with Terry, and thanks again for making the space.
Yeah, it's really great to be on this call, as many people have said, to see so many faces of teachers and friends who matter a lot to me and who Terry brought together. I've been thinking a lot about what it was like to go into an environmental studies education at Dartmouth, and knowing that, like, I knew I wanted to make some kind of impact in the world and didn't know how to do that. And there were so many options for how to do that in the department. And I look at the class of my colleagues who graduated with me at the same time, and we've all gone off to do really different things, like incredibly different things, to make an impact in the world. I never got to take a class with Terry, but I was very drawn to his approach to how to make a difference in the world. And we would meet pretty regularly as I was getting ready to graduate and talk about writing. I remember I brought him this essay about, it was about a toy butterfly that was in a store, and it was like a whole lot of lyricism and not a lot of anything meaningful. And Terry, in a very gracious way, said as much to me. And I think about that all the time. And Terry really encouraged me to continue a career in writing. And I think about Terry when I write all the time, because I'm always thinking about, well, what does this mean? And how do we make that meaning come through? And Terry really actively mentored me as I was starting to teach my own classes in creative writing. And I have still on my syllabi, exact text that Terry walked me through. And having that there made me just feel so much more confident teaching. And I could help guide my students through an experience, not necessarily the same as what Terry would give to us, but it just made me feel much calmer on the first day of class teaching and looking down and seeing Terry's words. But the skills that he taught us in that department, the way he taught us to be a change maker, change makers feel more important now than I could have possibly imagined at that time. And I'm gonna miss him so much, but I'm so grateful that he's living through all of us.
Thank you, Katie and Remy. Nice to see you. Brooke Williams.
Terry was one of my best friends, and I'm 68 years old, and I've seen a fair amount of death, no more than my share, but this is the hardest, to lose a friend like Terry. And in many ways, I'm kind of angry that somebody as full of light and love and honesty is gone, and so many people that are the reverse are still here. And I'm having a hard time kind of rationalizing that. So I really loved him, and I'm really a different and a better person because of him. And thank you, Kim and Doug, for putting this together.
Thank you, Brooke. Julia Hübner.
Sure. Hi. Thank you for putting this all together. And MK and Hillary and Jacob, it's really good to see you all. I met Terry in 2016 when he did a speed story. And I thought after his talk, I want this guy to be my family by choice. He's just awesome, and I really resonate with his life story. And over the next couple of years, he just became a really dear mentor to me. And we would sit at Umplebee's and eat cookies, and he would hear about all the gossip of a life of an 18 to 22-year-old and all of my choices that, to me, were so important. And to him, I was just another mentee, just like many of you were. And so the care and the thoughtfulness that he put into being my mentor is so important to me. And I will forever be grateful to have met him. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Julia. I've been thinking a lot since Terry passed away about how I can be more like Terry. And I think that's, something I hear from all of you, that we all in our lives have asked ourselves, well, how would Terry handle this? What, how would Terry be in this situation? And, that's his gift to us, as well as our way of honoring him. I can't help but imagine wherever his spirit resides, that his heart has to be full, hearing all of this. And the students of Terry, friends of Terry, there's a legion out there, it seems. And, wouldn't it be great if something grew out of this gathering and new introduction of people whose lives he touched?
I think Nancy Crumbine would like to speak.
Yes, Nancy.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thanks, Doug. Thank you all for this. I just want to say thank you to the students. And thank you all for sharing. It's just been so meaningful to hear everything. I had a high school teacher that changed my life. She was absolutely fabulous. I met her after school every day in her classroom, and we talked theology when nobody wanted to talk theology with me, etc. Years and years later, after years of gratitude, and kept up with her over the years, and I met with her, and she told me that I had really saved her life in coming every day, and she was in a very dark place, and that my coming and talking to her about my theological questions really saved her life. And it just was astounding to me. It never even occurred to me that I was giving her anything. It was always felt to me that I was just so grateful for all she had given to me. I just want to say that I could just imagine Terry watching this today and wanting to say to all of you students how much you gave to him. So thanks again for this.
Thank you, Nancy. If no one else wants to speak, maybe we'll bring this to a close. Thank you so much for everyone for being here and being willing to share so openly about what Terry's meant to you. I'm sure Kim and I can find a way to make this recording available to whoever would like it. And I think let's all just be like Terry and bring more of what he brought into the world. Take that on ourselves. It's wonderful to see you all and a lot of old friends. Everyone, be well, stay healthy, and keep your loved ones close.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug, so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, MK and Hillary.
Hey, thank you so much. This was so beautiful.
Thank you guys.
Oh.
How are you guys doing?
Up and down.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you came and helped to help us along this journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And this is the kind of thing Terry would have loved. Didn't want a big thing in a room, which you can't do now with COVID anyway, but he would have been so touched. And I think Nancy Crumbine's words were exactly so right on and so insightful that he would have been the one thanking the students. I know that because they did give him so much, and I think he realized quite how much he gave them, but it's pretty evident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were quite a few people who couldn't attend, and the emails have just been pouring in, very similar to what everybody, the students were saying. So it's what was said times 100 or more.
Oh, that's so nice.
Kim, we should try to gather those up somehow. Either, we should save it at EMVS, but we can pass it on electronically or in hard copy to you, MK and Hillary.
That'd be great.
I'm sure they'll continue to come in for a while. What Terry Tevis Williams said about his power, we really, really saw that.
Thank you both. Thank you very, very much.
Jack and Kathleen, thanks. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.